We are taught to see the world as a finished product, a static history set in stone. But what if the world isn't a monument, but a design? To understand the present, we have to dismantle the systems that built it. This is Architect Archives. Hello. Today on Architect Archives, we will be discussing free light sources. So, are you tired of paying a light bill? Are you able to build your own house? Do you have land and have no idea what to do with it and need free light sources? I've got just the thing for you. First off on this list, we will be discussing the Moser light. What is the Moser light, you ask? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let me tell you. It is a rather simple craft where you take a glass or plastic 2-liter bottle, clear of course. You fill it with water and a cap full of tube bleach. Figure out a way. You can cut a hole in your roof if you're able to, or if you're building a house, you can stick it right there in the roof, put it in the wall. I personally think the wall idea is a great idea, but to each its own. And what happens is the sun refracts off the water and produces enough light to equal a 60-watt incandescent bulb. How cool is that? You can even modify, in theory, of course, by adding a mirror on the side or up under the Moser bottle to give you a wider beam of light instead of just a direct beam of light, so you can light up more of the house, the upper parts, the lower parts, the whole shebang. You can also modify it for nighttime use if you attach small LEDs inside the cap, and then you can just use a simple solar panel system, like the garden lights that you get from the dollar store for $1.25. Yeah, you can pop that solar panel off, attach the LED lights to the solar panel, so therefore when the bottle is in the roof and the sun is out, it's charging the solar panel, which is charging the LED lights, which will give you juice after the sun goes down for about 3 or 4 hours. Simple, effective. This was invented by this absolute genius, Alfredo Moser, during a time of crisis, and they have been used worldwide in countries that have low electricity, are poor, or simply cannot afford 24 hours electric grid lights. As it is an excellent source of free energy if you plan on building a house or getting off the grid, or if you have the ability and the skills to install it in your own home to cut down on that light bill. A modern design would be something like this because it is simple, it is effective, and it is a beautiful, beautiful, simple creation. Next up on our list, we have a saltwater lamp. And I know what you're thinking. What? But let me explain. This concept is based loosely on the Baghdad battery, which, incidentally, has been used for hundreds and hundreds of years all across the Middle East and in different parts of Asia. So, what you basically have is you have your container, you have your iron, your copper, and your electrolyte, which in this case would be salt water, heavily concentrated salt water. Even though you can use vinegar, I just prefer salt water. Then you have your wires, your copper wires, and that would be your positive terminal, your negative terminal, and that turns it into a battery. And that way you can do things like this. And while it doesn't often produce 60 watts of light, it is quite effective at powering small LEDs. And if you put together enough cells, you can power a fan, a TV, or in extreme cases, maybe even a microwave. But we don't need that. Why are we cooking with radiation anyway? This, if you just really wanted to go off the grid, and look at that, it doesn't have to be that simple. I personally prefer the simpler things in life. But, to each its own. Now that we've covered a few light sources, I'd like to cover at least one more, and then we'll go on to natural air conditioning and heating. This is bioluminescent algae, and I think that this is one of nature's coolest little tidbits. So obviously, this is algae and it feeds off of photosynthesis. So basically, they charge in the sun and they glow all night. So, a cool little funky design you could do if you wanted to do free energy sources is you could buy this bioluminescent algae and you can put it in little pipes. And as long as they face the sun at some point during the day, they will in turn charge all night and it'll look something like this. And look at that. Doesn't that look so cool? Or you could even do something this if you wanted to go really crazy. This is something that can easily be found online, ranging from fairly cheap to, I'm not gonna. So, like I said, a little pricey, but worth it. Or you can just go down to the beach and collect it yourself. Not sure how legal that is, but you know what? They were put here for free. Okay, let's get back to free light sources. Now you can see in your house, you're good to go, right? But it's summertime. It's hot outside, and you're burning up. How do you cool the house down with no electricity? I would like to bring you to my first demonstration, the Bagdir. This amazing piece of ancient technology is over 1,000 years old and was used in ancient Persia, ancient Iran, to cool off the inside of houses in the middle of the desert. They had natural air conditioning. Now, let me explain to you how this works. So, these towers would harness any type of air that would come through and it would travel down through the ventilation system or the tunnel, if you will, and it would pull cold air or cool air into the house. And there was usually a vent either higher up in the ceiling or along the floor that would expel out the heat. So the hot air as the cold air was coming down. This could effectively reduce the temperature inside by 12 degrees Celsius or 53.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is really amazing for something that's over 1,000 years old. The thick mud brick walls that you can see here act like a thermal battery, so that takes the majority of the sun during the day, which escapes through the ventilation at nighttime. It cools, which also helps cool down the air which is being forced into the house, which then reroutes itself around the entire house, and again it escapes through the outside. So a modern example would probably look something like this, where you have your Bagdir kind of centered around the house, and then you could add a cool basin of water at the end, so when the air comes into the house, it hits the water. So before it spreads out throughout the house, it cools the air off significantly, and then again, the hot air would escape through the roof or through a vent on the floor. The cool thing about this is using that same technology in the wintertime or when it got really cold, you could close the vent up top and then open the vent in the middle that comes into the house, not the one at the bottom for the cold air, but in the middle, and it will basically essentially trap all the warm air in that structure, so that when the vent is closed, it will warm up the entire house. Bonus points if it was warm during the day, the stones were still hot, and you'll have continuous warm air, continuous heat throughout your house. Free heating, no light bill, no electricity bill. They also have things like something like this. And this is something that is also quite ancient, being utilized by both ancient Greeks and ancient Romans, like Socrates, is building a house with the back facing the south. Now, let me explain why you would do this. As you can see, if it is south facing, it provides, especially in the northern hemisphere, it provides natural heating as well as natural light during the winter time. And then for the summertime, what I would suggest is UV tinted windows, or, you know, you should have a garden anyway. Go out there, plant you a garden, grow some trees, put them by the windows, and that will help especially during the wintertime, to maximize the heat, and it'll work during the summertime to minimize the heat. Very simple, very effective. As a matter of fact, the ancient Romans, I believe, built entire cities using this principle so that everybody would be able to afford both heating and light. Super cool. Very simple, very effective, very ancient. Speaking of ancient Romans, they were also pioneers in underfloor heating, which, as you can see from the picture, they would build the pool or the floors elevated up from the ground, and they would have a giant heating chamber, and that chamber would pump the heat or steam throughout the floors, and that would warm the pools and incidentally also warm the floors if you were wealthy enough. This is a simple practice that can still be put into use today and can be effectively used to heat water, to warm the house, as well as various other things. Again, ancient but effective. This is an ancient Korean version. It's over 1,000 years old. It's called an ondal. And this is just a Korean version of under the floor heating. And as you can see, the smoke and fire goes in on one side. It heats the floor, the kitchen, the water, and then it goes out the chimney on the other side. So no smoke ever gets in the house, but very effective for keeping the house warm. They also have this is the king bed, which is ancient Chinese version of a warmed bed. So you would have your stove over here, and that would go and heat the whole bed. It would go out the chimney on the outside of the house. Again, nobody was in any danger of suffocating from smoke, and it would warm the family bed because that was common at that time. Or if you were really fancy or really rich, then you can afford to have everybody's bed, or at least the main people in the house, and let them have a heated bed. Pretty cool. Just as a fun little side note, they also have this, which was invented in China in the year 180 AD, which was the first rotary fan that could be powered by hand. And it was powered by hand until a bit later when they figured out how to add the hydraulics, and then it was a water powered rotary fan from almost 2,000 years ago. So that's pretty cool. And these are just a few ways that you can, naturally light, heat, and cool your house for free. Yes, you might have to put out a little money to get the materials or to build it, but once you spend that money, you won't have to spend any more money again. And if you do, keep in mind it's the bare minimum. Well, that's all for today, and I certainly appreciate you coming by and learning something new. If you have any questions, comments, or maybe any cool ideas of your own, please don't be afraid to drop down and comment below. Thank you so much, and thank you for coming to Architect Archives. Signing off.